Again, my name is Arthur Stamoulis, and I direct Citizens Trade Campaign, which, as Victor said, is a U.S.-based coalition of labor, environmental, family farm, consumer, human rights organizations, working to stop the expansion of NAFTA-style free trade agreements and to promote a positive vision for international trade. I'm going to use my time to give a quick overview of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and try to explain why it's so critical to social movements throughout the Pacific Rim. But before I do that, I just want to remind us all that cross-border people's movements have a long and successful history of derailing corporate power grabs described as trade deals. So personally, I got involved in trade justice organizing and really sucked into it on the streets of Seattle in '99. I'm sure a lot of you played a part in the movement of movements that helped stop the millennial round of WTO expansion, that has derailed the Doha round of WTO expansion. Some of you may have participated in the fights that stopped the multilateral agreement on investment, the free trade area of the Americas, a host of other corporate power grabs. And the point I just want to start with is that by working together, we've been remarkably successful at beating back some of the most powerful and well-organized economic interests in human history. And so, I normally end my presentations with that point, but I want to start with it today because, first, I think it's critical that we all remember that and internalize that and really feel it, but also because it helps to put the Trans-Pacific Partnership in context. Because what the TPP really is an end run around the People's Movement victory at the WTO. So for well over a decade now, corporations have been trying to use the World Trade Organization to advance their agenda of expanding deregulation, expanding privatization, expanding liberalization. But ever since '99, thanks to a lot of great organizing by a lot of people in this room, various countries have been standing up and saying no to that agenda. And because the WTO ostensibly works by consensus, that corporate expansion has pretty much come to a stalemate. And so corporations view the TPP as their way around that stalemate. The TPP allows these corporations to act through their proxy, the U.S. government, to essentially cherry pick those countries that are most willing to play ball with their agenda, to set the rules governing trade and investment among that handful of countries, and then, with the knowledge that full well the public policy impacts of this pact are going to extend far beyond just those countries initially involved. And so first off, if you look at just the countries currently involved in the TPP talks, they're Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, the United States, Vietnam, and starting in July, Japan. Just among those 12, this is a pact that's going to cover approximately 40% of the global economy. So huge in its own right. But the TPP is also being explicitly negotiated as what's called a docking agreement, meaning that other countries can dock on or join over time. Any APEC nation is already able to petition the existing TPP nations to join, and the U.S. Trade Representative has repeatedly said that the pact is open to any country willing to meet, quote unquote, the United States high standards for the agreement. And so, if the TPP moves forward and it is enacted, we know that for years to come, the United States is going to be pressuring other countries to join on. And for most, if not all of the countries, they're going to have no opportunity to influence the pact's terms whatsoever. The rules that are being developed right now are going to be the rules that countries are going to have to sign on to. And so the TPP, is often described by its architects as a standard-setting pact, and that's quite accurate. This is the pact that's going to set the standard by which pretty much all public policy in the Pacific Rim is judged, at least in the eyes of the U.S. government and the corporations that it's serving. And so, in case there's any misunderstanding about that, this very much is being negotiated in big corporations' interest. As Koryanka alluded to, after 3 years and 17 major rounds of negotiations, the Obama administration still refuses to tell the American public what's being proposed in our names for the TPP, and it's required other countries to keep draft text from their people as well. Meanwhile, the Obama administration has granted approximately 600 corporate lobbyists special cleared advisor status that grants them special access to the draft text. Companies like Walmart and Cargill and Chevron, you can imagine the others. What we know about the TPP and its 29 separate chapters comes not from our own government, but from a handful of leaked texts that were first published on our website, and frankly from one-on-one conversations with negotiators from other countries. And so the process behind the TPP, to my mind, is blatantly and obviously corrupt. But what does the pact mean in practice? So in the United States, when most people hear about FTAs, it's usually in terms of jobs being offshored. And certainly for those of us in the United States, the TPP will accelerate offshoring. It will accelerate the downward pressure on the wages and benefits of the jobs that we have left, something that already costs the bottom 70% of American households an estimated $3,100 a year in reduced compensation. And along those same lines, the TPP will also further undercut the tax base that's used to fund our public schools, our roads and bridges, other critical public services, impacting obviously poorer communities while benefiting the communities at the top. So this is going to be an agreement that's very, very harmful to the U.S. working class. But that job loss, that wage suppression, that reduction in public services is not something that's just going to be felt in the United States. It's going to be felt virtually everywhere in the world. The brands and the retailers and the other corporate interests that are behind the TPP want to use it not only to undercut wages and worker power in the United States, but throughout the world, including especially in China. Various countries within the TPP are already being promoted as the low-cost labor alternatives to China, particularly Vietnam, where the average minimum wage is just a third of what it is in China's manufacturing centers. That obviously means the TPP is going to hurt Chinese workplace organizing efforts, where employers can say, yeah, you probably deserve a raise, you're working hard, but look at these people in Vietnam who want your job and are willing to do it for even less money than you're being paid. Not only are we not able to give you a raise, but in fact, you're going to have to work additional unpaid overtime if you want to just hang on to what you have. I don't think I need to explain the race to the bottom to anyone in this room. But needless to say, the TPP is going to rapidly accelerate that global race to the bottom. One study suggests that El Salvador's textile industry stands to lose 22,000 jobs if the TPP moves forward. And again, they're not even party to the pact. And so I'll mention, very quickly that the TPP is also a disaster for public health. Leaked documents show that the United States is pushing for the TPP to effectively extend the length of drug patents and to also give pharmaceutical companies new tools for attacking the drug formularies that government-run healthcare programs use for deciding what medicines to purchase and at what prices. This is an agreement that quite obviously is going to increase healthcare costs in rich countries like the United States, and frankly, just be a death sentence for people in poorer nations who need access to generic versions of life-saving medications to survive. Doctors Without Borders, also called MSF, has called the TPP the most harmful trade pact ever for access to medicine. And of course, the TPP also expands the likelihood of rip and ship resource extraction throughout a wide variety of its chapters. And perhaps even more importantly, gives corporations new tools to undermine environmental movements' victories through its investment chapter, one of the few chapters that's also leaked. And I know that others are going to talk a lot more about investor-state dispute resolution. So rather than to get into the mechanics of that, let me just make a couple broad points about the movement impacts. So when the people of Cabañas, El Salvador, after a literally bloody, years-long campaign, finally convinced their government to deny a gold mining permit for an operation that was going to poison their water supply, the company turned to an investor-state tribunal and is now demanding hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation. When indigenous peoples in Ecuador finally won a multi-billion-dollar court judgment against Chevron to aid in the cleanup of the Amazon, the company turned to an investor-state tribunal to have that judgment stayed. When people in Quebec got a moratorium on fracking enacted, an energy company in Texas called that an indirect expropriation, and they've turned to an investor-state tribunal demanding, I believe, $250 million in compensation. And so when it comes to the environment or to public health or to the treatment of workers, the TPP is all about giving transnational corporations new tools for cutting the legs out from underneath people's movements. The same is true about indigenous rights movements, food sovereignty movements, movements trying to rein in Wall Street and financial speculation, and a host of other issues that I know we all care about. But as I said at the start, cross-border people's movements have a long history of beating back these corporate attacks, and we know how to win. First, no matter where we are in the world, we need to be shining a spotlight on the TPP to make sure that our communities know about it, that we understand the risks posed by this agreement, and that we're introducing increased public scrutiny and accountability to the negotiations. And then second, domestically here in the United States, we need to prevent Congress from approving new fast-track legislation for the TPP, which would allow the pact to be rushed through Congress, circumventing all ordinary review, amendment, and debate procedures. Simple trade agreements can pass Congress without fast-track, but corporate power grabs like the TPP cannot. And so in the United States, as we're educating our communities about the TPP, we need to be urging them to take action, demanding that members of Congress, particularly those in the House, oppose fast-track for the TPP. If we stop fast-track, we've essentially stopped the TPP. If fast-track is enacted, a lot more of the weight of stopping the TPP is going to fall on the shoulders of our brothers and sisters in other countries. Just to conclude with the timing, the time to act on fast-track and the TPP is now. The Obama administration has announced that they want to complete the TPP negotiations by this October at the APEC meeting in Bali. That may be an ambitious goal. Nonetheless, the decisions on the TPP are being finalized now through the fall. The Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, other groups, less than 2 weeks ago, launched their big coordinated campaign to get Congress to grant fast-track authority for the TPP. We need to be fighting back. There's our website, our Twitter account. There's a lot of information about the TPP out there. There's a lot of organizing going on. You don't need to start from scratch. Please get in touch if you want to be involved. So thank you very much.